Good evening. This is Aishwarya Banerjee, and I'm a research scholar at the Department of English Literature, Language and Cultural Studies, Vidyasagar University, West Bengal, India. Today, the topic of my discussion is Weapons Instead of Books, the Child Soldier Phenomenon in India's Northeast. Before I start the discussion, I would like to say that children do not initiate wars, yet they form the group of the worst affected casualties. Caught in the turmoil of a war zone, they often lose the protection of their families. They are abducted and recruited into armed groups. They are sexually tortured and mentally harassed. Irrespective of the fact that Article 6 of UNCRC guarantees them the right to survival, Article 28 guarantees them the right to education, and Article 38 ensures their protection during armed conflicts. Yet they are perpetually denied their basic right to education, medical aid, and above all, a peaceful childhood. According to a report by UNICEF, more than 1 in 6 children reside in conflict zones, which amounts to approximately 473 million children stuck in such zones, negotiating with a vulnerable childhood. The age group between 0 to 18 is most likely to fall prey to stress owing to their cognitive, socio-cognitive and neurobiological development. And it has been well established that early life stress disturbs the growth and development of children, and they exude severe post-traumatic stress disorders, behavioral disorders, disturbed sleep syndromes, and even psychosomatic disorders. According to one article, UNICEF has identified 6 heinous crimes against children. 1. Their recruitment into armed groups. 2nd, their abduction. 3rd, killing and maiming of children. 4th, sexual violence against children. 5th, striking schools or hospitals. And 6th, denying them their basic rights. Northeast India, which consists of 8 states, namely Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Assam, and Meghalaya, these states have been perpetually ravaged by brutal manifest violence. And unfortunately, Northeast India has been a permanent witness to all these 6 crimes. In our discussion, we would take up the first point, and that is the recruitment of children into armed groups. But before that, I would like to draw your attention to the concept of Hitler Jugend or Hitler Youth, which was a paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party, and it corroborated the idea of employing child soldiers into wars and armed conflicts. During Hitler's regime, young boys between 14 to 18 were given military training to make up for the dearth of soldiers fighting in the Second World War. And this marks the most chilling antecedent of employing child soldiers. Now, this concept also functioned as a totalizing apparatus of ideological conscription of childhood into the state's necropolitics. And theoretically, this concept challenges the traditional concept of childhood as a protected, apolitical space of innocence. At the backdrop of conflict, these child soldiers, they become a liminal subject. They are neither civilians nor they are trained combatants. So their position is somehow exploited as a tactical asset. And very unfortunately, the conventional notion of childhood collapses at the backdrop of conflict and violence, and these children are transformed into necropolitical subjects whose lives are governed by being proximity to death. And this actually triggers a lot of questions like, what is the fate of these children? Or what happens to these children? Are they killed? If not, are they ever able to come out of this? And to negotiate all these questions, let us look into some documentations made by some of the scholars working on the child soldier phenomenon in Northeast India. Because Northeast India has always been a hotbed of armed conflicts. So according to Priyadarshini Laishram, the age group of employing child soldiers into extremist organizations in Manipur, it has been categorized into three groups. And the first group is 8 to 11 years, the second group is 12 to 14 years, and the third group is 15 to 17 years. It has been witnessed that young children as young as 8 years have been recruited into armed groups. The maximum recruitments have been made from the group 12 to 17. According to another report made by Raju Kumar Nursery, he has made many case studies of the child soldiers in Assam and Manipur, and I would like to cite some of the case studies from Nursery's document. And one case study was about a boy named Rinku. The name was changed, and he joined an extremist group when he was just 15. He was arrested, but his group tried to get him out of jail, but he preferred living inside rather than coming out and living that life again. Another case study was about Suraj. Again, the name was changed, and he also was abducted by another armed group when he was 15. Another girl, Alina, she was studying in class 9 in Manipur when she was abducted by an armed group as claimed by her parents. Although the armed group, it claimed that she has joined on her own free will. Now, while social sciences scholarship dwells on the documentation of such recruitments, literature provides an epistemic platform where the trauma behind such recruitments can be articulated. And in this discussion, I have tried to draw from some of the select fiction from Northeast India to analyze the figure of this terrorist child as a victim of structural and systemic violence, as much as he is a symbolic metaphor for the entire region's turbulent identity. The first fiction that I would talk about is titled, it's a short story, it's titled An Old Man Remembers, and it is written by a Naga writer, Temsula Au. Here in this story, there is this young boy who asks his grandfather about his time during the Naga independence movement. And this question actually opens the attic door in the grandfather's mind. This attic door is kind of a liminal boundary between the grandfather's consciousness and his repressed memories about the Naga independence movement. The grandfather, the old man Sashi, he actually was a school children when during the Naga independence movement, and he soon found himself enmeshed with guns and weapons instead of books. Sashi and his friend Imli were barely 16 when they were trained killers, trained with the tactics of ambush and attack. And I would like to draw one example from the same story when Shashi, without any hesitation, killed one soldier on his head. And when he looked at his face, he saw that the soldier was almost of his age. And the look on his face was so horrifying that Shashi went out and vomited. Now, this act of emesis was a visceral representation of his internal dilemma between the demands of the armed conflicts and the moral burden of taking a life. And this vomiting was just not a biological reaction. It was actually the body's way of cleansing itself of its internal dissonance. This leads me to another fiction. It's a novel by Daisy Hassan, The Two-Let House, which is also set at the backdrop of Meghalaya's ethnic strife, where the identity politics is very much tangible. And here also in this novel, it's a coming of age novel, and there is this character called Kulai, and Kulai joins the union which was fighting for driving out the outsiders from the state, whom they called Dakars. And the Kulai's act of joining the union would apparently look very voluntary, but underneath there was this layer of manipulation and ideological indoctrination. But Kulai's disillusionment seeps in quite early in the novel when he had to perform an act of violence against his own free will. and after performing it he comes back and vomits in the wash basin. The same vomit motive as I have talked about in the last story as well. And Kulai's arrest actually brings forth the reality of such recruitments. Apparently, Kulai never showed any outward symptoms of trauma, but his behavioral pattern actually exuded that he was suffering from deep seated trauma, because through the heavily sonorous house, he would choose the darkest corners to sleep in. He would often sleep on the icy grates rather than choosing the four-poster bed. And at the age of 20, Kulai was killed, and by his own union members because of his mixed heritage. Kulai's death is a stark reminder of how identity politics has the capacity to erode the entire fabric of a society. And the recruitment of these young boys as mediums to exacerbate violence is a growing ulcer on the body of a society. And without a concerted effort, this ulcer will further grow and disease the entire foundation of a healthy sustenance. I would like to refer to another fiction, and it's a novel by Malsomi Jacob called Zoromi. There also it was it was at the backdrop of the Mizo independence movement. There also we had characters like Rama, Ralkappa, who were school children during the Mizo independence movement, and they wanted to be volunteers to it. So the children who are absorbed into conflict or armed groups, it does not just mean that they have been ideologically indoctrinated, but there also lies layers of systemic and structural violence where states' negligence, poverty, unemployment have been the causes. And in the conflict zones, when education becomes secondary, livelihood is criminalized, and the entire concept of childhood becomes economically unviable, violence does not just erupt, but it congeals. And this categorization of a terrorist child is a symptom of normalized structural violence. To dismantle such a categorization, we have to shift our attention. We have to stop asking questions like, what kind of a child resorts to such violence? We have to reorient our question and ask that what kind of a conflict-ridden world produces such armed childhoods and then brands them as enemies. Until and unless that shift is made, the discussion regarding the child soldier phenomenon and the predicament of the child soldier phenomenon, I think, will continue to linger. Thank you.